The morning sun painted North Canyon in shades of gold and amber. Theresa Collins stood behind the counter of her small ice cream shop, wiping down the glass display case with careful, practiced movements. At 67 years old, her hands still moved with precision, though they were gentler now than they had been in another life. "Good morning, Miss Theresa," called out young Tommy Martinez as he pressed his nose against the front window. His mother laughed and pulled him back. "Tommy, we're not even open yet," Mrs. Martinez said with an apologetic smile toward Theresa. Theresa smiled warmly and waved them inside. "It's okay, Maria. I'm always happy to see my favorite customers. Come in, come in." The bell above the door chimed softly as they entered. The shop was small but immaculate, with cheerful blue walls and white trim. Posters of classic ice cream sundaes decorated the space, and a row of metal stools lined the counter. Everything had its place. Everything was organized, though few people would guess that this careful order came from decades of different training. "Can I have chocolate chip today?" Tommy asked, his eyes wide with hope. "Of course you can," Theresa said, reaching for a cone. She scooped the ice cream with smooth efficiency, creating a perfect swirl. "Here you go, young man." "What do you say, Tommy?" his mother prompted. "Thank you, Miss Theresa." As they left, Theresa watched them walk down Main Street, hand in hand. North Canyon was that kind of place, small enough that everyone knew everyone, safe enough that children could walk to school alone, quiet enough that the biggest news was usually about whose garden won the county fair. This was exactly what Theresa had wanted when she arrived here 15 years ago. The morning passed slowly. A few regulars came in: old Mr. Patterson, who always ordered vanilla with rainbow sprinkles, the Henderson twins, who argued over whether strawberry or mint was better, and Mrs. Chen, who came in just to chat, even though she was lactose intolerant. "How's business, Theresa?" Mrs. Chen asked, settling onto one of the stools. "Steady and calm, just how I like it," Theresa replied, pouring them both cups of coffee from the pot she kept in the back. "You've been here, what, 15 years now?" "Almost exactly. Hard to imagine North Canyon without you. You're such a part of this community." Mrs. Chen smiled. "Though we still don't know much about your life before you came here." Theresa's smile remained steady, but something flickered behind her eyes. Something quick and practiced, a door closing smoothly. "Not much to tell. I worked for the government, got tired of the stress, wanted something peaceful. That's when I found this lovely town." It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. "Well, we're lucky to have you," Mrs. Chen said. "Speaking of the community, are you coming to the Spring Festival this weekend?" "They're having it up at Carson Park." "Wouldn't miss it," Theresa said. "I'm thinking of bringing my ice cream cart. The kids will love it." After Mrs. Chen left, Theresa spent the afternoon preparing. The Spring Festival was one of North Canyon's biggest events. Families would come from the surrounding areas. There would be games and music, and everyone would spend the day outdoors enjoying the beautiful weather. Theresa cleaned her portable ice cream cart, checking that everything worked properly. As she worked, her mind was calm, focused. She'd learned long ago to keep herself in the present moment, to not let the past creep in during quiet times. But sometimes, late at night, the memories would come anyway. That night, Theresa sat in her small house on Elm Street, a cup of chamomile tea cooling on the table beside her. The house was tidy and modest, a living room with comfortable furniture, a kitchen with everything in its place, 2 bedrooms though she only used one. On her mantel sat a few photographs: her parents, long deceased, her sister's family in Oregon, pictures of North Canyon's various community events. What wasn't visible were the other photographs, the ones she kept in a locked box in her closet. Photographs from another time, another life. She didn't look at them often, but tonight, For some reason, she felt drawn to them. Theresa retrieved the box and sat down on her bed, opening it slowly. Inside were her old credentials, faded photographs of colleagues, commendations and awards, newspaper clippings. The face that looked back at her from those old photos was similar but different. Harder, more alert, always scanning for danger. Special Agent Theresa Collins, Federal Bureau of Prisons, Fugitive Apprehension Unit. For 23 years, that had been her identity. She'd been one of the best fugitive hunters in the system, with an almost supernatural ability to track and capture escaped prisoners. Her methods were legendary in law enforcement circles. She could read terrain like a book, understand human psychology with startling accuracy, predict where desperate people would run. She'd tracked fugitives through deserts and mountains, through cities and wilderness. She'd worked cases that had been given up as impossible. Her success rate was over 90%, remarkable in a field where most escaped convicts were never found. But there was one case she couldn't forget. One case that had ended everything. Marcus Hendricks, a violent offender who'd escaped during a prison transfer. Theresa had led the hunt, following his trail through 3 states. She'd been close, so close, getting closer every day. And then Hendricks, desperate and cornered, had taken a hostage, a security guard at a bus station. Theresa had done everything right. She'd followed protocol, waited for backup, tried to negotiate. But Hendricks was unpredictable, dangerous. In the confrontation that followed, Hendricks had badly injured the guard before being captured. The guard had survived, but he would never fully recover. And Theresa, despite following every rule, despite doing everything she'd been trained to do, felt responsible. She'd been tracking Hendricks. She'd pushed him. If she'd moved slower, waited longer, approached differently, maybe the guard wouldn't have been hurt. The rational part of her mind knew this wasn't true. The incident had been reviewed, and she'd been cleared of any wrongdoing. Her supervisor had told her she'd saved the guard's life by acting when she did, but Theresa couldn't shake the feeling of guilt, the weight of responsibility. She'd started having nightmares. Every escaped prisoner she tracked became Hendricks in her dreams. Every successful capture felt like it was leading to another disaster. The job she'd loved began to feel like a curse. After months of struggling, Theresa had made the hardest decision of her life. She'd resigned, handed in her badge, walked away from 2 decades of service, left behind the identity she'd built her entire adult life around. For a year, she'd drifted, not knowing what to do or where to go. Then she'd found North Canyon, small, quiet, safe. A place where nothing dangerous ever happened. A place where she could be someone simple and ordinary. She'd bought the ice cream shop with her savings. It was the perfect opposite of her old life. Cheerful, innocent, uncomplicated. Making children happy was about as far from hunting dangerous criminals as you could get. The people of North Canyon had welcomed her warmly, never questioning her vague explanations about her past. Over time, she'd become Miss Theresa, the ice cream lady, a fixture of the community. She attended town meetings, helped at church fundraisers, volunteered at the school, and she'd been happy. Or if not quite happy, at least at peace. The nightmares had faded. The guilt had dulled to a distant ache. She'd learned to live with what had happened, even if she'd never forgiven herself. Theresa looked down at an old photograph, her team, standing in front of the Federal Bureau of Prisons building. Young, confident faces. Several of them were probably retired by now. They'd been like family once. She put the photographs away, locked the box, and returned it to its place in her closet. That life was over. This was her life now, and it was enough. As she got ready for bed, Theresa had no idea that tomorrow would change everything. Saturday morning arrived bright and perfect. North Canyon's Carson Park filled with families as volunteers set up booths and games. Colorful banners hung from the trees, and the smell of grilled food wafted through the air. Theresa arrived early with her ice cream cart, parking it in a shady spot near the playground. She'd stocked it with all the favorite flavors and had packed extra supplies, knowing it would be a busy day. "Miss Theresa!" called out Sheriff Tom Bradley, walking over with his wife, Susan. "Perfect spot you got there." "Thought the kids would find me easily near the playground," Theresa said, adjusting her cart's umbrella. "How's the turnout looking?" "Best one yet," Sheriff Bradley said proudly. "We've got families coming from 3 counties over. Should be a great day." As the morning progressed, Theresa stayed busy serving ice cream to an endless stream of children and adults. She knew almost everyone by name, asked about their families, remembered their favorite flavors. This was her element now: community, connection, simple pleasures. Around noon, Theresa noticed the Peterson family arrive. Bill and Lauren Peterson had an 8-year-old daughter named Emma, a bright, energetic girl with curly red hair and an infectious laugh. Emma was one of Theresa's regular customers, always choosing cookies and cream. "Miss Theresa," Emma bounded over, "can I have my usual?" "Of course, sweetheart. Big day today, huh?" "The biggest. Daddy said we're going on a nature hike this afternoon, up the forest trail." Bill Peterson smiled apologetically. "She's been talking about it all week. The education committee organized guided nature walks, supposed to teach the kids about local plants and wildlife." "Sounds wonderful," Theresa said, handing Emma her cone. "You be careful on those trails, okay?" "I will. I'm going to find the coolest leaves to show everyone at school." The Peterson family moved on, and Theresa continued serving customers. The afternoon was warm and pleasant, with music playing from the bandstand and children's laughter filling the air. It was exactly the kind of peaceful day that made Theresa love North Canyon. Around 3 o'clock, Theresa noticed Sheriff Bradley talking urgently into his radio. His expression had changed from relaxed to concerned. She watched as he spoke to several other people, their body language becoming tense. Something was wrong. Within minutes, the word spread through the festival. Emma Peterson was missing. Theresa's heart dropped. She'd just seen the little girl hours ago, so full of life and excitement. Lauren Peterson was crying, and Bill was explaining frantically to Sheriff Bradley. The nature walk group had stopped at a scenic overlook. Emma had been right there with them. They'd spent maybe 15 minutes looking at the view, and the guide had been explaining about different types of trees. When they'd gathered to continue the hike, Emma was gone. "We looked everywhere nearby," Bill said, his voice shaking. "We called her name. She wouldn't just wander off. Emma's a good girl. She always stays with the group." "How long has she been missing?" Sheriff Bradley asked. "Almost 2 hours. We searched for an hour before we came down to get help." 2 hours. In Theresa's old life, she would have known exactly what that meant. 2 hours was a long time for a lost child. Long enough to get seriously turned around in unfamiliar terrain. Long enough to get hurt. Long enough for a situation to become critical. Sheriff Bradley was already organizing search parties. "We need everyone who can help. We'll divide into groups and cover the forest systematically. The trail she was on connects to several others, so we need to search all possible routes." Volunteers gathered quickly. North Canyon was the kind of place where everyone helped in a crisis. But as Theresa watched them organize, she could see the problems. Most of these people had good hearts, but no real training. They would trample evidence, miss signs, waste time searching areas already covered. The forest around North Canyon was extensive. Thousands of acres of thick woods, rocky terrain, steep hills. Finding one small child in that vastness required expertise. Theresa stood behind her ice cream cart, feeling something stir inside her that she hadn't felt in 15 years. It was her old instincts, awakening. The part of her that knew how to track, how to search, how to find. No, she'd left that life behind. She was just an ice cream shop owner now. She should let the authorities handle this. But as the minutes ticked by and the search parties headed into the forest with their disorganized plans and amateur methods, Theresa felt her resolve weakening. This was a child. Emma, sweet Emma, who loved cookies and cream ice cream and had her whole life ahead of her. Mrs. Chen appeared beside her. Theresa, are you joining the search? I don't know if I'd be much help. Everyone helps. That's how North Canyon works. Mrs. Chen squeezed her arm. Come on, they need all hands. Theresa looked at the forest, then at Lauren Peterson's tear-stained face, then back at the forest. Something in her chest tightened, an old muscle memory stirring to life. She made a decision. Sheriff Bradley, Theresa called out, approaching him quickly. Before the search parties go out, I need to talk to you. The sheriff turned, surprised. Theresa, are you volunteering? Yes, but listen to me. I need to know exactly where Emma was last seen, and I need people to stop walking in that area immediately. Something in Theresa's voice made Sheriff Bradley pause. It was different from her usual gentle tone, sharper, more authoritative. Why? Because if everyone keeps walking through there, they'll destroy any tracks or signs. I need to see the area as it was, before it gets contaminated. Theresa, I appreciate the help, but we don't have time for... I have experience, Theresa interrupted. She took a breath. A lot of experience. In tracking, in search and rescue. I used to do this professionally. Please trust me. Sheriff Bradley studied her face. Something in her eyes convinced him. Okay, everyone, he shouted. Hold the search parties for 10 minutes. Theresa is going to check the last known location first. Nobody goes up that trail until she gives the word. What's going on? Bill Peterson asked desperately. Why are we waiting? My daughter is out there. Mr. Peterson, I promise you I'm going to find Emma, Theresa said, and her voice carried a certainty that made him believe her. But I need to do this right. Can you show me exactly where you last saw her? They drove up to the trailhead in Sheriff Bradley's vehicle. The nature walk group was still there, looking anxious and guilty. The guide, a young man named Kevin, was clearly shaken. Show me the spot, Theresa said. They led her up the trail about a quarter mile to a clearing with a spectacular view of the valley. We were here, Kevin said. I was explaining about the oak trees. Emma was right there, with the other kids. I wasn't paying close attention to each individual child. I was focused on my presentation. When I asked everyone to gather up, she was just gone. The area Theresa knelt down to examine. Her eyes moved quickly, taking in details that others would miss. The ground was a mix of dirt and pine needles. There were many footprints, too many. The search had already damaged much of the evidence, but not all of it. On the edge of the clearing, away from where most people had walked, Theresa spotted a small sneaker print in a patch of soft earth. It pointed toward a less traveled path that branched off from the main trail. Did Emma go down that path? She asked. No, Kevin said. We never went down there. That's not part of the tour. Theresa examined the print more carefully. It was fresh, made within the last few hours. Small, about the right size for an 8-year-old. The depth and angle suggested the person had been running, excited maybe. She followed the secondary path a short distance. There, another partial print. And there, a small broken branch at about waist height for a child. The break was fresh, the wood still green inside. Theresa felt her old skills clicking into place, smooth as clockwork. It was like putting on a familiar coat that still fit perfectly. She'd thought these instincts were buried, but they'd just been sleeping, waiting. She went this way, Theresa said. Maybe she saw something interesting, a bird, a deer. She wandered off to get a closer look. Which way does this path go? Sheriff Bradley asked. It connects to the old Miller Creek trail system, Kevin said. But that's rough terrain. Rocky, lots of ravines. We don't take tour groups there because it's too dangerous. Teresa's expression became more serious. How many ravines? Maybe a dozen small ones, 2 or 3 larger ones, and it's easy to get turned around in there. All the paths look the same.
If Emma had wandered into that area and gotten disoriented, she could be anywhere. And if she'd fallen into one of those ravines? No. Theresa couldn't think like that. She had to stay focused, methodical. I'm going after her, Theresa said. Alone, at least for the first part. I need to track without interference. Theresa, with all due respect, you're 67 years old, Sheriff Bradley said. That's rough country. Maybe you should just point out the direction and let some younger folks. I'm not as young as I used to be, Theresa interrupted. But I know what I'm doing. I've tracked people through worse terrain than this. Trust me, Tom. There was something in the way she said it, a quiet confidence that came from real experience that made the sheriff nod slowly. Okay, but take a radio. And if you're not back in 2 hours, I'm sending teams after you. Fair enough. Theresa took the radio and checked her watch. It was already 4:30. They had maybe 3 hours of good daylight left. One more thing. Tell the search parties to focus on the main trails for now. If I lose Emma's trail, we'll need them as backup. But right now, I need them out of my way. She turned to Lauren and Bill Peterson. The parents looked terrified but hopeful. I will find your daughter, Theresa said. And for the first time in 15 years, she felt the old purpose flowing back into her veins. That's a promise. Theresa moved into the forest with careful deliberation, her eyes scanning the ground continuously. Every few yards, she would stop, examine the earth, check the vegetation. She'd done this hundreds of times before, though never for a lost child from her own community. The secondary path was narrow and overgrown. Emma's trail was faint, but readable to someone who knew how to look. A disturbed pile of leaves here, a small scuff mark there, a broken twig at child height. Each sign told a story. Emma had been moving fast at first, excited probably, running even. The footprints showed it. But after a few hundred yards, the trail changed. The prints became more erratic, less purposeful. Emma had realized she was lost. Theresa felt a pang of sympathy. The moment of fear when a child realizes they've gone too far and can't find their way back. Emma must have been terrified. The path split. Theresa examined both options carefully. The right fork showed no signs of recent passage. The left fork had a faint print, barely visible, and a small handprint on a tree trunk at about the right height. Left it was. The terrain became rougher. The path was really just a game trail now, something deer or other animals used. Trees grew thicker, blocking out more sunlight. The forest floor was covered in leaves and pine needles, making tracks harder to spot. But Theresa had learned tracking in forests far more challenging than this. She'd pursued fugitives through swamps, deserts, mountains. This was difficult, but it was within her capabilities. Every 10 minutes, she radioed her position to Sheriff Bradley. She could hear the anxiety in his voice, but she kept her own voice calm and professional. At one point, the trail simply disappeared. Theresa stopped, looking around carefully. There were no prints, no signs. It was as if Emma had vanished into thin air. No, people don't vanish. There's always a trail. You just have to find it. Theresa expanded her search pattern, moving in a careful spiral outward from the last sign. 5 yards, 10 yards, nothing. 15 yards. There, disturbed leaves at the base of a large rock outcropping. Theresa moved closer and saw it. Emma had climbed over this rock. On the other side was a small ravine, maybe 8 feet deep. Theresa climbed carefully over the rock and peered down into the ravine. The bottom was covered in leaves and fallen branches. She could see where someone small had slid down the side. The leaves were disturbed. There were scrape marks in the dirt. Had Emma fallen? Or climbed down deliberately? Theresa descended into the ravine, using tree roots as handholds. At the bottom, she found clear evidence. Emma had landed here, sat for a moment. There was a distinct impression in the leaves, then stood up and walked. Good. That meant she probably wasn't badly hurt from the fall. But the ravine was long and confusing, running for hundreds of yards in both directions. Which way had Emma gone? Theresa examined the ground at the base of the slope where Emma had descended. There, a small footprint pointing east. And there, a short distance away, another one. Emma had gone east, deeper into the forest. Theresa followed, moving along the ravine bottom. This was harder going. The ground was uneven, covered in rocks and fallen timber. Several times she had to climb over obstacles or duck under low branches. She keyed her radio. "Tom, I'm in one of the ravines now, about half a mile from the overlook, heading east. Emma came this way. I've got a solid trail." "Copy that. How's the terrain?" "Rough. If Emma kept going this direction, she's going to be tired and probably scared. The ravine runs for a while, but it should open up into the Miller Creek area eventually." "That's good, right?" "Depends. If she stays in the ravine, it's like a channel. Limits her options, makes her easier to track. But if she climbs out and gets into the main forest, she could go anywhere." Theresa kept moving. The sun was lower now, the shadows lengthening. She had maybe 2 hours of usable light left. After that, searching would become much more difficult. She couldn't let that happen. Emma had been lost for over 3 hours now. The temperature would drop when the sun set. Emma would be cold, frightened, possibly injured. Time was critical.
Theresa picked up her pace slightly, following the trail signs with practiced efficiency. Every few minutes, she would find something. A small handprint on a rock where Emma had steadied herself, a print in a patch of mud, disturbed vegetation. The signs told her that Emma was still moving, still searching for a way out. Then Theresa found something that made her heart sink. Blood. Not much, just a few drops on a rock. But it was fresh, bright red. Emma was hurt. Theresa examined the area more carefully. There was a sharp rock with blood on its edge. Emma had likely stumbled, scraped her hand or arm. The amount of blood suggested a cut, not a serious wound, but still concerning. She radioed the information to Sheriff Bradley. "Tom, Emma is injured. Minor cut on her hand or arm probably, but she's still mobile. Trail is still heading east." "Theresa, it's getting late. Maybe we should send in backup now." "Not yet. I'm close, Tom. I can feel it. Give me another hour." There was a pause. 1 hour. Then I'm sending teams regardless. Theresa continued tracking. The ravine began to widen, becoming shallower. Soon it would open up into the larger forest. She needed to find Emma before that happened, before the trail could disperse in too many directions. And then she heard it. A sound. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. Someone was crying. Fair enough. Theresa took the radio and checked her watch. It was already 4:30. They had maybe 3 hours of good daylight left. One more thing. Tell the search parties to focus on the main trails for now. If I lose Emma's trail, we'll need them as backup. But right now, I need them out of my way. She turned to Lauren and Bill Peterson. The parents looked terrified, but hopeful. "I will find your daughter," Theresa said. And for the first time in 15 years, she felt the old purpose flowing back into her veins. "That's a promise." The sound came again, a child's voice, weak and frightened, calling out, "Hello? Help! Emma!" Theresa shouted. "Emma, can you hear me?" A pause. Then, I'm here. I'm stuck. Theresa moved quickly toward the voice, scrambling over rocks and pushing through brush. Keep calling out, Emma. I'm coming to you. Help! I can't get up. The ravine had opened into a small clearing where several rock formations created a kind of natural maze. Theresa followed Emma's voice, and then she saw her. Emma was sitting at the base of a steep rocky slope, her face dirty and tear-stained, holding her left arm carefully. Her clothes were torn and covered in dirt and leaves. When she saw Theresa, her face crumpled with relief. Miss Theresa, you found me. Theresa quickly covered the distance between them and knelt down beside the frightened child. Emma, sweetheart, I've got you. You're safe now. Are you hurt? My ankle, Emma sobbed. I fell and it really hurts. And I cut my hand on a rock. And I tried to climb up there. She pointed at the rocky slope. But I couldn't do it, and I got scared I would fall again. Theresa quickly assessed the situation. Emma's right ankle was swollen, probably sprained. Her left hand had a cut across the palm, not deep, but it needed cleaning. She was cold, frightened, exhausted, but alive and conscious. All things considered, she was in remarkably good shape. Okay, Emma, listen to me carefully. You're going to be fine. I'm going to take care of you. Theresa pulled out her radio. Tom, I've found her. Emma is alive and responsive. She's hurt but stable. We're in a clearing about... She looked around, orienting herself by the position of the sun and the terrain features. About 3/4 of a mile east of the overlook, at the place where the ravine opens up into the Miller Creek area, near the tall rock formations. The radio crackled with relief and excitement. Sheriff Bradley's voice was thick with emotion. Thank God. Thank God, Theresa. Is she okay? Sprained ankle, minor cut on her hand. She can't walk, but I can carry her. I need you to tell the Petersons that their daughter is safe, and have medical ready at the trailhead. Will do. Do you need us to send help to carry her out? Theresa looked at the terrain. It would take a team at least an hour to reach them, maybe more in the fading light. No, I've got her. We're coming out now. She turned back to Emma. Okay, sweetheart. I'm going to carry you, and we're going to get you home to your mom and dad. But first, let me look at that hand. Using her first aid training, another skill from her old life, Theresa cleaned and bandaged Emma's cut, using supplies from the small emergency kit she always carried. Then she gently examined the swollen ankle. It's not broken, Theresa said, but it's going to hurt for a while. I need you to be brave, okay? Can you do that? Emma nodded, wiping her tears. How did you find me? Everyone said the forest was too big. I followed your trail, the signs you left behind. What signs? I didn't leave any signs. Theresa smiled. You didn't mean to, but everywhere you walked, you disturbed the earth, broke little branches, left footprints. Those signs told me a story. Where you went, how fast you were moving, when you got scared. All I had to do was read that story. Like a detective? Something like that. Miss Theresa, I'm sorry. I saw a deer and it was so pretty, and I just wanted to see where it went. And then I couldn't find the group anymore, and I kept walking and walking, but I just got more lost. I know, honey. It's scary when that happens. But you did good things too. You stayed in one place when you realized you were really lost and you kept calling for help. That's smart. Theresa carefully lifted Emma in a fireman's carry, settling the child's weight across her shoulders. Emma was small for 8, maybe 60 pounds. Theresa had carried heavier weights, though admittedly, that was many years ago. She would feel this in her back tomorrow, but right now, adrenaline was helping. Hold on tight, Theresa said. This is going to be a bit of a rough ride. She began the trek back, moving carefully but steadily. The path she'd taken to get here was fresh in her mind. She'd memorized every turn, every landmark. Even in the growing darkness, she knew the way. The radio chattered with updates. Search parties were being redirected, medical staff was standing by, and the Petersons were crying with relief at the trailhead. The child was getting drowsy, a combination of exhaustion, relief, and probably mild shock. That was normal after trauma. "Stay awake, Emma," Theresa said gently. "Talk to me. Tell me about school." "I like reading class best," Emma murmured. "We're reading Charlotte's Web." "That's a good one. What's your favorite part?" As Emma talked, Theresa navigated the rough terrain, climbing back through the ravine, over the rock outcropping, along the game trail. Her legs were aching, her back protesting, but she kept moving. In her old life, she'd learned to push through physical discomfort. This was nothing compared to some of the hunts she'd been on. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in oranges and purples. But up ahead, Theresa could see lights, flashlights from the search parties waiting at the trail junction. "Almost there, sweetheart," Theresa said. "Just a little bit further." And then they emerged onto the main trail. Dozens of people were waiting, and when they saw Theresa carrying Emma, a cheer went up. "She's got her. Emma's safe." Sheriff Bradley ran forward with a medical stretcher. "Let us take her, Theresa." Theresa carefully transferred Emma onto the stretcher, her arms and shoulders burning with relief. EMTs immediately began checking Emma's vitals, while Lauren and Bill Peterson pushed through the crowd, crying and calling their daughter's name. "Mommy! Daddy!" Emma called out weakly. The reunion was tearful and joyous. Lauren Peterson sobbed as she held her daughter's hand, while Bill Peterson kept repeating, "Thank God, thank God, thank God." Sheriff Bradley put a hand on Theresa's shoulder. "That was incredible. How did you do that?" Theresa was breathing hard, her clothes dirty and torn, her gray hair disheveled. "Just lucky, I guess." "That wasn't luck. You tracked her like a professional. Where did you learn to do that?" Before Theresa could answer, Mrs. Chen appeared with a blanket and a bottle of water. "Theresa, you're shaking. Sit down." "I'm okay, just tired." But as the adrenaline faded, Theresa realized she was more than tired. She was exhausted, emotionally and physically drained. She'd just done something she thought she'd never do again, used skills she'd thought she'd buried forever. Bill Peterson approached her, his eyes red from crying. "Miss Theresa, I don't know how to thank you. You saved our daughter's life. I'm just glad she's safe. But how did you find her? Sheriff Bradley said the search parties couldn't get a trail." Theresa hesitated. All these years, she'd kept her past hidden. But now, with everyone staring at her with questions in their eyes, she realized the secret was over. "I used to be a federal agent," she said quietly. "I tracked fugitives for the Bureau of Prisons. It was a long time ago." A ripple of surprise went through the crowd. Mrs. Chen's eyes went wide. Sheriff Bradley's expression shifted from confusion to understanding. "You were a federal agent?" someone asked. "Here, in North Canyon?" "Not here. I retired and came here to get away from that life. I wanted something peaceful." Theresa looked around at all the familiar faces. "I'm sorry I never told anyone. It was a part of my life I wanted to leave behind." There was a moment of silence. Then Bill Peterson said, "I don't care what you used to be or why you came here. All I know is you saved my little girl. You're a hero." And suddenly everyone was talking at once, thanking her, asking questions, expressing amazement. The crowd surrounded her with warmth and gratitude. Theresa felt tears prick her eyes. She'd been afraid that revealing her past would change how people saw her, would make them view her differently. But instead, they were embracing her, celebrating her. All right, give her some space." Sheriff Bradley said, gently dispersing the crowd. Theresa needs rest, and Emma needs medical attention. We can all talk more later. As they made their way back down the trail toward the parking area, Theresa walked beside the stretcher carrying Emma. The little girl reached out and took her hand. Thank you, Miss Theresa, Emma whispered. You're my hero. Theresa squeezed her hand gently. You're very welcome, sweetheart. Now you rest. Your parents are going to take good care of you. At the parking area, an ambulance was waiting. The EMTs loaded Emma inside for the short trip to the local clinic, where a doctor would examine her properly. The Petersons climbed in with their daughter, but not before Lauren hugged Theresa tightly. Thank you doesn't seem like enough, Lauren said through fresh tears. You gave us our daughter back. As the ambulance drove away, the crowd began to disperse, though many people stopped to thank Theresa personally on their way out. She accepted their gratitude with quiet grace, still processing everything that had happened. Sheriff Bradley stayed behind with her. Theresa, I need to ask, were you really a federal agent? A fugitive hunter? Yes, Tom, for 23 years. He let out a low whistle. And all this time, you've been selling ice cream. That's what I wanted, a quiet life, something simple and safe. Why did you leave, if you were that good at it? Theresa was quiet for a moment. There was an incident. Someone got hurt on one of my cases. It wasn't my fault, technically, but I couldn't do the job anymore after that. Couldn't live with the risk that it might happen again. And today? Today I knew that if I didn't use those skills, a child might die. And I realized that I'd rather face my fear than live with that possibility. Sheriff Bradley nodded slowly. Well, I'm glad you made that choice. North Canyon is lucky to have you, Miss Federal Agent turned ice cream lady. Theresa managed a tired smile. Theresa is fine. By the time Theresa got home that night, word had spread throughout North Canyon. Her phone was ringing constantly, friends calling to check on her, express amazement, ask questions. She eventually turned the ringer off and just sat in her quiet living room, processing the day's events. She'd broken her own rule. She'd used the skills she'd sworn to leave behind, and instead of it triggering all the old fears and trauma, she felt something else. Not exactly happiness, but a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in 15 years. The next morning, Theresa woke to find dozens of messages and a small crowd of people gathered outside her house. News reporters from the county newspaper wanted interviews. Community members brought flowers and thank you cards. Children who'd heard about Emma's rescue wanted to hear the story firsthand. Mrs. Chen helped Theresa field the crowd. You're famous now, Theresa. Might as well get used to it. I didn't do this for fame. I did it for Emma. We know. That's why everyone admires you even more. Over the next few days, Theresa's story spread beyond North Canyon. The county newspaper ran a front-page article. Former federal agent saves local child. A TV news crew came from the city to interview her. Emma's parents told anyone who would listen about the ice cream lady who was secretly a hero. Theresa gave a few interviews, uncomfortable with the attention, but understanding that people were curious. She kept her answers simple and humble, always redirecting focus to Emma's safety rather than her own actions. What surprised her most was how the revelation changed nothing in her day-to-day life, except in good ways. People still came to her ice cream shop, still called her Miss Theresa, still treated her with the same warmth and friendliness. If anything, they seemed to appreciate her even more. So you're like a real-life superhero, Tommy Martinez said one afternoon at the shop, his eyes wide with wonder. You tracked bad guys and caught them? I helped find people who'd broken the law and escaped, yes, Theresa said, handing him a chocolate cone. And you can track anything? Like animals and stuff? I could learn to track most things with enough practice and the right conditions. Could you teach me? I want to be a tracker when I grow up. Theresa laughed, the first real laugh she'd had in days. Maybe I could teach you some basics, but finish school first, okay? A week after the rescue, Bill and Lauren Peterson invited Theresa to dinner. Emma was there too, her ankle wrapped but healing well, her hand bandaged. The little girl hugged Theresa the moment she arrived. Miss Theresa, look, I can walk now. Well, kind of, with crutches. That's wonderful, Emma. How are you feeling? Better. A little scared of the woods now, but Daddy says that's normal. During dinner, the Petersons expressed their gratitude again and again. We'll never be able to repay you, Bill said. You literally gave us our daughter back. Seeing her safe and happy is payment enough, Theresa said. Really? Still, Lauren said, the whole town is talking about you, about your past. If you don't mind me asking, why did you hide it for so long? Theresa was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. I wasn't proud of who I'd become at the end of my career. I felt like I'd failed, like my skills had led to someone getting hurt. Coming here, starting fresh, it gave me a chance to be someone different, someone without that weight. But you're the same person, Lauren said gently. You were always capable of what you did last week. You just hadn't needed to do it. Maybe you're right, Theresa said. Maybe I've been running from myself as much as from my past. Emma spoke up then, her young voice clear and thoughtful. Miss Theresa, I'm glad you knew how to find me. I'm glad you had those skills. Because if you didn't, I might still be lost in the forest. Out of the mouths of babes, Theresa thought. Sometimes children understood things more clearly than adults. After dinner, as Theresa was leaving, Emma gave her a drawing she'd made. It showed a woman with gray hair, Theresa, standing in a forest, holding the hand of a small girl with red curly hair, Emma. Above them, the sun was shining, and birds were flying in a blue sky. At the top, in careful childish writing, it said, "Thank you for saving me, Miss Theresa. You are my hero." Theresa felt tears well up. She folded the drawing carefully and tucked it into her purse. Thank you, Emma. I'll treasure this. That night, Theresa looked at her old photographs again, the ones from her federal agent days. But this time, she didn't feel the usual mixture of pain and regret. Instead, she felt something like acceptance. She'd been a good agent. She'd helped a lot of people. Yes, there had been one tragic incident, but she'd done everything right in that situation. The guard who'd been hurt had recovered. She'd checked on him years ago, learned he was okay, had even returned to work eventually. His injury had been terrible, but it hadn't been her fault. For the first time in 15 years, Theresa allowed herself to see that clearly. She'd spent so long running from her past, trying to bury those skills, that she'd forgotten something important. Those abilities weren't just about catching criminals. They were about finding people, helping people, saving lives. And in Emma's case, those skills had meant the difference between a child found and a child lost forever. Maybe it was time to stop running. 2 weeks after Emma's rescue, North Canyon held a special town meeting. Theresa didn't know what to expect when Sheriff Bradley asked her to attend. The town hall was packed. It seemed like everyone in North Canyon had shown up. Theresa sat in the front row, confused and slightly anxious. Mayor Jennifer Walsh took the podium. We've gathered tonight to recognize someone special. 2 weeks ago, 8-year-old Emma Peterson went missing in the forest during our spring festival. While search parties organized, one person, using skills none of us knew she had, tracked Emma through difficult terrain and brought her home safely. The mayor gestured to Theresa. Theresa Collins, could you please stand? Feeling self-conscious, Theresa stood. The room erupted in applause. We've learned that Theresa spent 23 years as a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Prisons, Mayor Walsh continued. She was an expert in fugitive apprehension, with an exceptional record of successful captures. She tracked dangerous criminals through some of the most challenging terrain imaginable. And when one of our own needed help, she used those skills to save a life. More applause. Teresa's cheeks flushed. Tonight, we want to honor you, Theresa, with North Canyon's Citizen Hero Award. This award is rarely given, and never has it been more deserved. Sheriff Bradley brought forward a plaque and a framed certificate. The certificate declared Theresa Collins a citizen hero of North Canyon, and the plaque bore similar words along with the date of Emma's rescue. As Theresa accepted the awards, the crowd stood, applauding loudly. She saw Emma sitting with her parents, beaming and clapping enthusiastically. She saw Mrs. Chen wiping away tears. She saw all her regular customers, her friends, her community showing their love and appreciation. I don't know what to say, Theresa said when the applause died down. I'm not comfortable being called a hero. I just did what needed to be done. That's what makes you a hero, Mayor Walsh said. Real heroes don't seek glory. They just do what's right when it matters most. Theresa smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. Thank you, all of you. North Canyon has been my home for 15 years. You welcomed me without questions, accepted me without judgment. You gave me a peaceful life when I needed it most. Finding Emma wasn't just about using old skills. It was about protecting this community that I love. Because Emma is one of us, and we take care of our own. The crowd erupted in applause again. After the ceremony, as people mingled and chatted, Sheriff Bradley approached Theresa with a thoughtful expression. I've been thinking. Your skills are remarkable, and clearly they're still sharp. What if we could use them? What do you mean? We're a small town, limited resources. We don't have specialized training in search and rescue or tracking or any of the things you know. What if you could train some of our people? Be a consultant? Nothing official or demanding, just someone we could call on when needed. Theresa considered this. I don't want to go back to law enforcement, Tom. This wouldn't be law enforcement. This would be community safety. Teaching people how to track lost hikers, find missing kids, basic wilderness search and rescue. You could do it on your own terms, your own schedule. The idea was intriguing. It would be a way to use her skills for good without the pressure and danger of her old job. And after finding Emma, Theresa had to admit, it felt good to use those abilities again. Let me think about it, she said. Take all the time you need. Over the next few weeks, Theresa did think about it. She thought about Emma, about how her skills had saved a life. She thought about the possibility of helping others without having to hunt dangerous criminals. She thought about the fact that her trauma had been about a specific incident, not about her skills themselves. Maybe there was a way forward that wasn't just ice cream, but wasn't federal agent work either. Something in between. Something that let her use what she knew to help people on her own terms. One morning, as she was opening her shop, Kevin, the nature walk guide who'd been leading Emma's group, stopped by. Miss Theresa, I wanted to apologize again. I should have been watching the kids more carefully. It wasn't your fault, Kevin. Kids wander. It happens. Still, I feel responsible. And I was wondering, would you be willing to teach me some tracking basics? I lead those nature walks all the time, and if I knew how to track, maybe I could find someone faster if they got lost. That's a good idea, Kevin. Really? You'd teach me? Theresa smiled. Why not? Meet me here Saturday morning. Bring a notebook. We'll start with the fundamentals. Word spread quickly that Theresa was offering tracking lessons. Soon, several other people asked to join. Parents who wanted to be able to find their kids if they wandered off. hikers who wanted to improve their outdoor skills, even a couple of teenagers who thought tracking was cool. Theresa found herself organizing a small class that met every Saturday morning. She took them into the forest and taught them the basics: how to read footprints, how to identify disturbed vegetation, how to understand animal trails versus human paths, how to use terrain features to navigate. She discovered that teaching was fulfilling in a way she hadn't expected, passing on her knowledge to people who would use it responsibly, helping them become more capable and confident in the outdoors. It felt meaningful. Her ice cream shop remained her primary business and her main joy, but the teaching added a new dimension to her life, a way to honor her past skills while staying true to her peaceful present. Sheriff Bradley eventually formalized her role as a volunteer consultant for North Canyon's emergency services. She helped develop search and rescue protocols, trained volunteers, and agreed to be on call for situations requiring specialized tracking skills. The nightmares that had plagued her years ago didn't return. Instead, Theresa slept well, content with the balance she'd found between her past and present. 6 months after Emma's rescue, Theresa received a letter. It was from Marcus Hendricks, the fugitive whose case had ended her career. She stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Part of her wanted to throw it away unread. But another part, the part that had been healing over these past months, needed to see what he had to say. The letter was short. Miss Collins, I'm writing from prison, where I'll be for the rest of my life. I read in the news about you saving that little girl. It made me think about our situation years ago. I want you to know that what happened to that security guard wasn't your fault. I know you've probably been carrying guilt about it, but you shouldn't. I made bad choices. I hurt that man, not you. You did your job, and you did it right. I hope you found peace. Based on what I read, it sounds like you have. You saved a child. That's good. That's real good. I don't deserve forgiveness, and I'm not asking for it. I just wanted to tell you the truth. You were never responsible for what I did. That's all my own. Marcus Hendricks. Theresa read the letter 3 times. Then she sat down on her couch and cried, not from pain, but from release. She'd needed to hear those words, needed someone to say out loud what her rational mind had always known, but her emotional heart had struggled to accept. She wasn't responsible for Marcus Hendricks's actions. She'd done her job correctly. The guard's injury was tragic, but it wasn't her fault. After a while, Theresa took out a piece of paper and wrote a response. She thanked Hendricks for his honesty, told him she hoped he was finding his own peace in prison, and wished him well. She didn't owe him anything, but somehow, writing those words helped her close a final door on that chapter of her life. A week later, Emma Peterson stopped by the ice cream shop with exciting news. Miss Theresa, I won the Young Author Award at school. That's wonderful! What did you write about? I wrote a story about a lady who seems ordinary but is actually a secret hero. My teacher said it was very creative. Emma grinned. I wonder where I got that idea. Theresa laughed. I can't imagine. Cookies and cream? Yes, please. As Theresa prepared the ice cream, Emma said, Miss Theresa, when I grow up, I want to be like you, someone who helps people. You can be anything you want to be, Emma. Just remember, being a hero isn't about having special skills or doing dramatic things. It's about helping people when you can, in whatever way you can. Sometimes that's tracking someone through a forest. Sometimes it's being kind to a neighbor. Sometimes it's just being a good friend. Like being the ice cream lady? Exactly like that. Making people happy with ice cream is important too. Emma took her cone thoughtfully. I think you're the best kind of hero. The kind who does special things but doesn't brag about it. After Emma left, Mrs. Chen came in for her daily visit. I heard you got a letter from that fugitive, the one from your last case. In a small town, news traveled fast. I did. It was actually helpful. Closure, I guess. Good. You deserve closure. You deserve happiness. Mrs. Chen smiled. You know, when you first came to North Canyon 15 years ago, you were running from something. We could all see it, even if we didn't know what. But you're not running anymore, are you? No, Theresa said. I'm not running anymore. Because this is home. Yes, this is home. That evening, as Theresa closed up her shop, she looked around at the cheerful space she'd created. The ice cream case gleamed. The stools were lined up neatly. The walls held photos of community events and happy customers. On her counter sat Emma's drawing, now framed and displayed proudly. Behind the counter, visible only to her, was the plaque from the town declaring her a citizen hero. Theresa thought about the journey that had brought her here, from a high-pressure federal agent career through trauma and guilt to a quiet life in North Canyon, and finally to this moment where she'd integrated all the pieces of herself into something whole. She wasn't just the ice cream lady. She wasn't just the former federal agent. She was both, and everything in between. She was Theresa Collins, a woman who'd made mistakes, found redemption, and learned that you didn't have to choose between your past and your present. You could honor both. As she locked the door and walked home through the quiet streets of North Canyon, Theresa felt genuinely at peace for the first time in many years. The sun was setting, painting the sky in beautiful colors, and somewhere in the distance, she could hear children laughing and playing. This was her life now. Simple, peaceful, meaningful. And if someone needed help, if a child got lost, if a hiker went missing, if the community faced any crisis where her skills could make a difference, she would be ready. But for now, she was just Theresa, the ice cream lady of North Canyon. And that was enough. A year after Emma's rescue, North Canyon established a new tradition. Every spring, on the anniversary of Emma being found, the town held a community safety day. The event featured basic first aid training, wilderness safety workshops, and, always drawing the biggest crowd, Theresa's tracking and search lessons. What had started as a small Saturday class had grown into something much larger. Theresa stood in front of 40 people, ranging from teenagers to seniors, in the cleared area near Carson Park. She was more comfortable in front of crowds now, though she still preferred the intimate setting of her ice cream shop. Remember, she was saying, demonstrating on a patch of soft earth, a footprint tells you a story. The depth tells you weight and speed. The direction tells you intent. The wear pattern tells you if someone was tired, injured, or moving normally. This print here, she pointed, shows someone running. See how the toe dug in deeper than the heel? The crowd leaned in, fascinated. Among them was Tommy Martinez, now 10 years old and seriously interested in becoming a tracker. Beside him was Emma Peterson, now 9, who never missed one of Theresa's lessons. "Miss Theresa," Tommy called out, "what's the hardest tracking job you ever did?" Theresa smiled. She'd learned to talk about her past more openly now, without the shadow of shame or regret. The hardest was probably tracking a fugitive through a Louisiana swamp. Lots of water, which erases tracks, dense vegetation, wildlife to worry about. But I followed him for 3 days and eventually found him. "Was he dangerous?" Emma asked. "Yes, but I had backup, and we caught him safely. No one got hurt." After the lesson, Theresa stayed to answer individual questions. Many people thanked her personally, as they did every time. The community's gratitude never seemed to fade. Sheriff Bradley approached as the crowd dispersed. "Theresa, I have a request. The county sheriff's office wants to know if you'd be willing to do some training for their people. They heard about our program here and they're impressed." "Countywide training?" Just a few workshops. Share your expertise with professional first responders. They'd pay you for your time. Theresa considered. It would mean expanding beyond North Canyon, reaching more people. But it would also mean more time committed to this work, less time for her ice cream shop. Let me think about it. I don't want to stop being the ice cream lady, Tom. That's still who I am first. I know. And that's what makes you special. You're not trying to go back to being an agent. You're just sharing what you know while living the life you chose. That night, Theresa sat in her living room with a cup of tea, thinking about the sheriff's offer. On her mantel was a collection of mementos now, photos from various community events, the Citizen Hero plaque, letters from families she'd helped over the past year, 3 more successful searches for lost hikers, and Emma's original drawing. Her life had become richer than she'd imagined it could be when she first arrived in North Canyon. She hadn't just found peace. She'd found purpose, community, and a way to use her skills that felt right. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. When she answered, she found Emma Peterson standing there with her parents. "Emma has something for you," Lauren said with a smile. Emma held out a carefully wrapped package. "It's for the anniversary of you finding me." Theresa unwrapped it to find a handmade scrapbook. Inside were photos from that day, some she'd never seen before, taken by news crews and community members. There were pictures of her carrying Emma out of the forest, of the emotional reunion, of the crowd celebrating. But there were also newer photos: Theresa teaching her tracking classes, Theresa at various community events, Theresa in her ice cream shop surrounded by happy customers. Each photo had a caption written in Emma's careful handwriting, describing the moment and what it meant. The last page had a photo of Theresa and Emma together, taken just last week at the ice cream shop. Below it, Emma had written, "Miss Theresa Collins is my hero. She saved my life. She teaches people how to help others. She makes the best ice cream in the world. She shows that you can be many things at once: quiet and strong, simple and skilled, ordinary and extraordinary. Thank you for everything, Miss Theresa. Love, Emma." The tears spilled down Theresa's cheeks. "Emma, this is beautiful. Thank you." "You're welcome. I wanted you to see how many people you help. Not just me, everyone." After the Petersons left, Theresa sat with the scrapbook, paging through it slowly. Emma was right. The photos showed someone who'd built a life of meaning and connection, not despite her past, but incorporating it in a healthy way. She thought about Sheriff Bradley's offer. Training county responders would mean helping even more people, potentially saving more lives. But it would also mean stepping further into the public eye, becoming more associated with her agent past than her ice cream present. The question was, which person was she? The answer came clearly: both. And that was okay. Theresa decided to accept the county sheriff's offer, but with conditions. She would do quarterly training workshops, no more than that. She would never carry a weapon or badge again. And she would always maintain her ice cream shop as her primary identity and occupation. The first county workshop was nerve-wracking. These were professional law enforcement officers and emergency responders, many with years of experience. What could she teach them? But as she began demonstrating tracking techniques, explaining the psychology of lost persons, sharing lessons learned from decades of fieldwork, she saw their respect and attention. They took notes, asked intelligent questions, practiced the techniques she showed them. A young deputy named Sarah Chen, no relation to Mrs. Chen from North Canyon, was particularly interested. "This is incredible," she said during a break. "We never got this kind of specialized training in the academy. The way you read terrain, understand human behavior in crisis, it's like you're reading a book the rest of us can't even see." It's just practice and experience, Theresa said. You could learn it too, with time. Would you be willing to mentor me? I'm part of our search and rescue team, and I want to get better. Theresa found herself agreeing. Sarah began visiting North Canyon regularly, and Theresa would take her into the forest for practical lessons. The mentorship reminded Theresa of her early days in the Bureau of Prisons, when senior agents had taught her their skills. The training sessions led to something unexpected. Several successful searches where Theresa's students applied their new knowledge. A lost Alzheimer's patient found by a deputy who correctly read the signs of confused wandering. A missing teenager located by a team who properly searched a complex urban environment. Each success felt like a vindication of Theresa's decision to share her knowledge. But through it all, she remained rooted in North Canyon and her ice cream shop. Every morning, she opened the shop at 10. Every afternoon, regulars would stop by for their usual orders and friendly conversation. The shop had become more than a business. It was a community gathering place, a spot where people knew they could find a listening ear and a friendly face. You know what I love about this place? Mrs. Chen said one day. It's exactly the same as it was 15 years ago. In a world that's always changing, your ice cream shop is constant. Change isn't always good, Theresa said, handing her a coffee. Sometimes the best thing is to stay steady, says the woman who's now training county sheriffs and mentoring deputies, Mrs. Chen teased. You've changed plenty, Theresa. You've just done it while keeping your core the same. It was true. Theresa had integrated her past and present in ways she'd never imagined possible when she first arrived in North Canyon. She was no longer running from who she'd been. She was building on it. One evening, Theresa received a phone call from someone she hadn't spoken to in 16 years, Robert Chen, her former supervisor at the Bureau of Prisons. Theresa Collins, his familiar gravelly voice said, I read about you in a law enforcement newsletter. Saving kids, training deputies, living in some small town. What the hell happened to you? Despite herself, Theresa laughed. Robert had always been blunt. I retired, Robert. Found a different life. Yeah, I got that. But why? You were one of my best agents. You could have run the whole division eventually. There was an incident, the Hendricks case. I remember. That wasn't your fault, Theresa. We all told you that. I know. Intellectually, I always knew. But it took me a long time to believe it emotionally. Robert was quiet for a moment. So you ran away. Yes, I ran. But I found something better than what I was running from. This ice cream shop, and the community, and the peace. And recently, a way to use my skills that doesn't carry the same weight as agent work. Training local responders? Yes. Teaching people how to find lost hikers, missing kids, search and rescue, basically. That's good, Robert said. That's real good, Theresa. I'm glad you found that balance. They talked for another hour, catching up on mutual friends and old cases. When they finally hung up, Theresa felt a sense of closure. She'd been afraid that her former colleagues would see her retirement as a failure or a betrayal. But Robert's approval, even his pride in what she'd built, meant more than she'd expected. 2 years after Emma's rescue, North Canyon faced its biggest crisis since Theresa had arrived. A group of students from the county high school had gone on a camping trip in the mountains about 30 miles from town. They were supposed to return Sunday evening, but they never showed up. By Monday morning, their worried parents had contacted authorities. Sheriff Bradley called Theresa immediately. We've got 7 missing teenagers and 2 teachers. They went to Bear Ridge Mountain for a weekend camping trip. Cell service is spotty up there, and we haven't been able to reach them. A storm hit the area yesterday afternoon. Heavy rain, some flash flooding. Theresa felt her old instincts kick in. What's the search plan? County Rescue is mobilizing, but they're asking if you'll consult. You've trained some of their people and they respect your expertise. This is the biggest search operation we've had in years. I'm in. Where do we meet? County Sheriff's Office in an hour. Bring overnight supplies. This could take a while. Theresa closed her shop early, leaving a sign explaining she was helping with the search. She packed a go bag with supplies she'd learned to carry during her agent days: extra clothes, first aid kit, water purification tablets, high-energy food, rope, flashlight, compass, and maps. At the county sheriff's office, she found a command center in full operation. Maps covered the walls, radios crackled with updates, and search coordinators were organizing teams. Sarah Chen, now a senior deputy and search team leader, greeted her with obvious relief. "Thank God you're here, Theresa. We've got a situation." The briefing was sobering. 9 people missing in a wilderness area after a major storm. Bear Ridge Mountain had multiple camping sites and trails covering dozens of square miles. The storm had caused mudslides and flash floods in several areas. Cell towers in the region were damaged, making communication difficult. "Do we know their planned route?" Theresa asked, studying the maps. "They filed a camping permit," Sarah said, pointing to a marked trail. "They were supposed to camp at Echo Lake, then hike the Bear Ridge Trail loop and return Sunday. But we found their van at the trailhead with a flat tire. One of the teachers sent a text message Saturday evening saying they were changing plans because of the flat, but the message was incomplete. We only got 'changing route because of' before losing signal." Theresa examined the maps carefully. If they couldn't use their van because of the flat tire, they might have chosen a different camping spot, something closer to the trailhead. That's what we thought. But we've checked the nearest sites and found nothing. What about the storm? When did it hit exactly? Saturday evening around 6 p.m. Heavy rain for 3 hours, then intermittent showers until midnight. Theresa traced possible routes on the map. If they were hiking when the storm hit, they would have needed shelter quickly. Not a planned campsite, something immediate. A cave, an overhang, a ranger station. Sarah pulled up a topographic map with additional features marked. "There's an old ranger station here, about 3 miles up the original trail. It's been abandoned for years, but it's still standing." "Have you checked it?" "Not yet. We prioritized the marked camping areas first." Change priorities. If I were a teacher with 7 kids in a sudden storm, I'd head for the nearest solid shelter. This ranger station is the best option in that area. Sarah radioed instructions to search teams, redirecting them toward the old ranger station. Then she turned to Theresa. "Will you come with us? Your experience could make the difference." Theresa nodded. "Let's go." The drive to Bear Ridge took 90 minutes. The search team consisted of 12 people, including Theresa, deputy sheriffs, trained search and rescue volunteers, and 2 EMTs. Sarah led the team with quiet confidence, clearly drawing on Theresa's training. At the trailhead, they geared up quickly. The trail was muddy from the storm, with evidence of flooding in low-lying areas. Theresa examined the ground carefully. "Look here," she said, pointing to tire tracks. "This van has been here for more than 2 days. See how the mud has settled in the treads? And these footprints heading up the trail, multiple people, including small prints. Teenagers." "How recently?" Sarah asked. The Theresa examined the prints more closely. "Hard to say exactly because of the rain, but probably Saturday morning based on the condition. The storm would have washed away anything made after 6 p.m. Saturday." They followed the trail toward the old ranger station. The hike was challenging, with the muddy conditions and evidence of storm damage everywhere. Trees had fallen across the path, and several areas showed signs of mudslides. After 2 hours of hiking, they rounded a bend and saw it, the old ranger station, a small wooden building with a stone chimney tucked into a grove of trees. and smoke was coming from the chimney. "There!" Sarah called out. "Someone's in there." They hurried forward, and as they approached, the door opened. A man in his 40s stepped out, looking exhausted but relieved. "Thank God," he said. "You're the rescue team?" "Deputy Sarah Chen, County Sheriff. Are the students with you?" "Yes, all 7 kids and both teachers. Everyone's safe, just tired and hungry." Inside the ranger station, they found the group huddled around a small fire. The students were teenagers between 15 and 17, dirty and tired but uninjured. The other teacher, a woman in her 30s, was distributing the last of their food supplies. "What happened?" Sarah asked. The male teacher, who introduced himself as David Martinez, explained. "We got a flat tire Saturday morning. I texted the school about changing our route, but I don't think the message went through properly. We decided to do a shorter hike since we couldn't drive to Echo Lake. We started up the main trail, planning to camp at one of the closer sites. Then the storm hit," the female teacher, Ms. Johnson, continued. "It came on so fast, so heavy. We were maybe 3 miles in when it started, and within minutes we were soaked. The kids were scared. We remembered this old ranger station from the maps and made our way here." "Smart thinking," Theresa said. "Seeking solid shelter was the right call." "We've been here since Saturday evening," David said. "The storm knocked out our phones completely. We couldn't even get emergency calls through. We had some food and camping supplies, but we were starting to run low. We figured eventually someone would realize we were overdue and send help." One of the students, a teenage girl with mud-streaked face, spoke up. "Are you Theresa Collins, the tracker lady from North Canyon?" Theresa was surprised. "Yes, I am. My cousin Emma Peterson told me about you. She said if we ever got lost, you'd find us." Theresa smiled. "Well, you weren't lost. You were exactly where you needed to be, safe and sheltered. But yes, we found you." The EMTs checked everyone over. Despite their ordeal, the group was in remarkably good shape. They were cold, hungry, and tired, but no one was injured or hypothermic. The teachers had done an excellent job keeping everyone safe and calm. As the search team prepared to escort the group back to the trailhead, Sarah pulled Theresa aside. "You were right about the ranger station. Your instincts led us right to them." "It was logical thinking more than instinct. Put yourself in their shoes, figure out what you would do, follow that logic. That's what you've been teaching us, to think like the people we're searching for, to understand their decisions and limitations." Sarah smiled. "It works." The hike back took 3 hours, with regular breaks for the exhausted students. At the trailhead, worried parents were waiting, and the reunion was tearful and joyous. News crews had gathered, and reporters wanted statements. Theresa stayed in the background, letting Sarah and the official search team handle the media. This was their success, their operation. She'd just been a consultant. But David Martinez found her before she could slip away. "Ms. Collins, the deputies told me you were the one who figured out where we'd be. Thank you. You probably saved us another day or two of being stranded up there." "You did the hard part," Theresa said. "You kept 9 people safe through a major storm. That's not easy." "Emma Peterson's cousin, Jenny Henderson, she talked about you the whole hike back. Says you're her cousin's hero and now you're hers too." David smiled. "Seems like you have a lot of young fans." After the successful rescue, Theresa drove back to North Canyon. She was exhausted, dirty, and ready for a hot shower and her own bed. But she also felt deeply satisfied. Another group of people found, another crisis resolved. When she arrived home close to midnight, she found Mrs. Chen sitting on her porch. "I figured you'd be getting back around now," Mrs. Chen said. "I brought soup." "You're the best neighbor anyone could ask for." They sat together on the porch, eating soup and watching the quiet street. "You're on the news again," Mrs. Chen said. "County-wide search, 9 people found safe, and they're crediting tracking expert Theresa Collins." I just pointed them in the right direction. "Stop being so modest. You're making a real difference, Theresa. Not just in North Canyon anymore, across the whole region." Theresa was quiet for a moment. "I never wanted to be famous or recognized. I just wanted peace." "And you have peace, but you also have purpose. The two aren't mutually exclusive." Mrs. Chen patted her hand. "You've built a good life here, one you can be proud of." After Mrs. Chen left, Theresa sat alone on her porch for a while longer, thinking about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From federal agent to recluse to community member to regional expert. She'd traveled far and somehow ended up exactly where she needed to be. They talked for another hour, catching up on mutual friends and old cases. When they finally hung up, Theresa felt a sense of closure. She'd been afraid that her former colleagues would see her retirement as a failure or a betrayal. But Robert's approval, even his pride in what she'd built, meant more than she'd expected. 3 years after Emma's rescue, Emma Peterson turned 12 years old. For her birthday party, she asked for something unusual. Instead of typical party games, she wanted Theresa to teach her friends some basic tracking skills. The Theresa laughed when Emma called with the request. "You want a tracking party? It'll be cool. All my friends think you're amazing. They want to learn how to be trackers too." So on a sunny Saturday afternoon, Theresa found herself leading a group of 12-year-olds through the forest near Carson Park, showing them how to identify different animal tracks, how to tell which direction a person was traveling, and how to use natural landmarks for navigation. The kids were enthusiastic and surprisingly attentive. Emma was clearly proud, showing off what she'd learned from years of attending Theresa's workshops. "This footprint is from someone walking normally," Emma explained to her friend Katie. "See how the heel and toe are both pressed in evenly? If they were running, the toe would be deeper." Theresa smiled, watching Emma teach. The girl who'd once been lost and frightened in these woods now moved through them with confidence, reading signs and understanding the forest. After the party, as parents picked up their children, Bill Peterson approached Theresa. "Emma wants to be a park ranger when she grows up. Did you know that? She mentioned it in one of our lessons. She says it's because of you, because you showed her that knowing how to track and understand nature can help people." Bill's eyes were warm. "You changed her life, Theresa. Not just by finding her that day, but by showing her a path forward. A way to turn a scary experience into something positive." Emma did that herself. She's a remarkable kid, with a remarkable role model. That evening, Theresa reflected on Bill's words. She'd never thought of herself as a role model, but apparently she'd become one, especially to young people interested in search and rescue, tracking, and wilderness skills. Over the next few years, that role model status grew. High school students started choosing her as their career day interview subject. Young adults entering law enforcement or park service would seek her out for advice. Her quarterly county workshops expanded to include classes specifically for young people interested in wilderness careers. But through all of it, the ice cream shop remained her anchor. Every morning, she opened at 10. Every afternoon, regulars stopped by. The shop was still cheerful and welcoming, still a place where everyone knew they'd find a friendly face and their favorite flavor. "You're like Clark Kent," Tommy Martinez said one day. He was 14 now, serious about pursuing a career in search and rescue. "Clark Kent is a reporter, but he's also Superman. You're the ice cream lady, but you're also this amazing tracker who saves people." Theresa laughed. "I'm definitely not Superman. I'm just someone with particular skills who found a way to use them that feels right. That's what makes you cool, Tommy insisted. You don't make a big deal about it. You just help people when they need help. On the 5-year anniversary of Emma's rescue, North Canyon held a special community celebration. It had become a tradition. Community Safety Day had evolved into an annual festival celebrating both emergency preparedness and community connection. Mayor Walsh gave a speech recognizing Theresa's contributions to North Canyon and the broader region. 5 years ago, Theresa Collins used her expertise to save Emma Peterson's life. Since then, she's trained hundreds of people in search and rescue techniques. She's consulted on dozens of successful searches across 3 counties. She's become a regional authority on tracking and wilderness survival. And through it all, she's remained our beloved neighbor, friend, and ice cream lady. The crowd applauded, and Theresa stood to accept their appreciation. Emma, now 13 and growing into a confident young woman, came forward with a gift. On behalf of everyone you've helped, everyone you've taught, and everyone who's grateful you came to North Canyon, Emma said, we want to give you this. It was a wooden sign, beautifully carved and painted. It read, "The Ice Cream Lady, Theresa Collins, North Canyon's hero, friend, teacher, guardian. We'd like to hang this above your shop," Emma continued, "so everyone knows who you are and what you mean to us." Theresa felt tears spring to her eyes. She'd spent so many years hiding from her past, and now her community wanted to celebrate it. "Thank you," she managed to say. "All of you. North Canyon gave me a home when I needed one. You accepted me, gave me peace, and eventually gave me a way to use my skills for good again. I'm the lucky one." The celebration continued with food, music, and demonstrations of search and rescue techniques. Theresa's students, now numbering in the hundreds, had come from across the region to attend. They shared stories of successful searches, lives saved, people found because of the skills Theresa had taught them. Sarah Chen, now a lieutenant in the county sheriff's office and head of their search and rescue division, gave a presentation about how Theresa's training program had revolutionized their department's capabilities. Before Theresa's workshops, our success rate in wilderness searches was about 60%. Now it's over 90%. That's dozens of lives saved, dozens of families reunited, all because one woman was willing to share what she knew. As the sun set on the celebration, Theresa stood with Emma on the hill overlooking Carson Park. 5 years ago, they'd walked out of that forest together, a frightened child and a reluctant hero. Now they stood together as mentor and student, friend to friend. "Miss Theresa," Emma said, "do you ever regret leaving your old job, being a federal agent?" Theresa thought about it carefully. "No, that job was important, and I'm glad I did it. But this life is better for me. I get to help people without the weight and danger of hunting criminals. I get to teach instead of just doing. And I get to be part of a community instead of always being the outsider tracking someone down." "Do you think you'll ever stop teaching? Retire completely?" "Maybe someday, but not yet. There are still people who need training, still skills to share." Theresa smiled. "And I'll never retire from the ice cream shop. That's mine for as long as I can run it." "Good, because your cookies and cream is still the best." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the community celebrate below. Families laughing, children playing, friends gathering. North Canyon at its finest, small, close-knit, caring. This was home. Not just a place to hide from the past, but a real home built on connections, purpose, and peace. 10 years after Emma's rescue, Theresa Collins celebrated her 77th birthday. The occasion was marked by a community gathering at Carson Park, not because Theresa wanted the attention, but because Mrs. Chen had insisted and the whole town had supported the idea. "You don't turn 77 every day," Mrs. Chen said when Theresa tried to protest. The celebration was warm and personal. Current and former students shared stories. Families whose loved ones had been found thanked her again. Young people she'd mentored talked about their careers in park service, law enforcement, and search and rescue. Emma Peterson, now 18 and about to start college studying wildlife management, gave a speech that brought many to tears. 10 years ago, I got lost in the forest. I was 8 years old, scared, hurt, and convinced I might never see my family again. Then Miss Theresa found me. She used skills I didn't know anyone had, expertise that seemed almost magical to my child's mind. She carried me out of that forest and back to safety. But that wasn't the only thing she gave me. Over the past 10 years, Miss Theresa has taught me that experience matters, that skills can be used for good, that it's never too late to change your path or find your purpose. She showed me that being a hero isn't about being famous or dramatic. It's about being there when you're needed, using what you know to help others, and staying humble and kind through it all. Because of Miss Theresa, I'm going to college to study wildlife management and park ranger work. I want to help protect natural spaces and help people who get lost in them. I want to pass on what she taught me. Miss Theresa, you saved my life. But more than that, you shaped it. Thank you for everything. When Emma finished speaking, the crowd stood and applauded. Theresa, sitting in a place of honor with tears streaming down her face, stood and hugged Emma tightly. "I'm so proud of you," Theresa whispered. "You're going to do amazing things." Because I had an amazing teacher. Later, as the party wound down, Theresa sat with Sheriff Bradley, now retired himself, but still a close friend. "You built something special here, Theresa," he said. "Not just the training program or the successful searches. You built a legacy of helping people, of passing knowledge forward." "I never intended to build a legacy. I just wanted to make ice cream and live quietly." Tom laughed. "And you still do that. But you also created something bigger. You changed how this region handles search and rescue. You trained a generation of responders. You showed a lot of young people that they could make a difference." It was Emma, really. Finding her reminded me that my skills had value, that I didn't have to be afraid of them or ashamed of them. And Emma reminded you because you were there, because you chose to use those skills when it mattered. That's the point, Theresa. You chose to help. That evening, as Theresa sat in her living room, she looked at the collection of mementos that had accumulated over the years. The original framed drawing from Emma, the Citizen Hero plaque, photographs from dozens of trainings and successful searches, letters from grateful families, awards from law enforcement organizations, a proclamation from the county declaring her an honorary deputy, but also photos from her ice cream shop, pictures of regular customers spanning 10 years, community event snapshots, birthday cards from friends, everything that made up her quiet, normal life in North Canyon. The two parts of her life, the extraordinary and the ordinary, had woven together seamlessly. She was both the expert tracker and the friendly ice cream lady, both the teacher and the neighbor, both the hero and the regular community member. And she'd finally, fully, made peace with all of it. Her old fears about the Hendricks case had faded to distant memory. She understood now that she'd done everything right in that situation, and that the guard's injury, while tragic, wasn't her fault. Marcus Hendricks had made his choices, and Theresa had done her duty. More importantly, she understood that her skills, the tracking, the hunting, the reading of human behavior, weren't dangerous or shameful. They were tools, and tools could be used for good or ill depending on the wielder. She'd chosen to use them for good, in a way that fit her values and her peace of mind. The next morning, Theresa opened her ice cream shop at the usual time. Tommy Martinez, now 24 and a professional search and rescue coordinator, stopped by for his morning coffee. "Morning, Miss Theresa. Cookies and cream for breakfast?" "Tommy, you know I don't recommend ice cream for breakfast. But it's a special occasion. I got promoted. I'm heading up the new regional training center. And I wanted you to be the first to know. We're naming the facility after you. The Theresa Collins Search and Rescue Training Center." Theresa was stunned. "Tommy, that's too much." "It's not enough. You started all this, Miss Theresa. The training programs, the improved success rates, the lives saved. We want everyone who comes through that facility to know who you are and what you've accomplished. I don't need my name on a building. Maybe not. But we need it there, as a reminder of what one person can do when they choose to share their knowledge and help others." Tommy smiled. "Besides, it's already decided. The dedication ceremony is next month. You'll be there, right?" Theresa sighed, but she was smiling. "I suppose I don't have much choice." "Nope. Cookies and cream for breakfast it is then. To celebrate." As Theresa scooped the ice cream, she watched Tommy through the shop window, heading off to his important job, carrying forward the work she'd started. She thought about Emma, soon to be a park ranger, about Sarah Chen, leading county search and rescue, about the dozens of other students who'd taken her lessons and made careers of helping people. This was her legacy. Not just the searches she'd conducted or the people she'd found, but the knowledge passed forward, the skills shared, the next generation trained and ready to help others. And it had all started with one scared little girl lost in the forest and one reluctant hero who decided to stop running from her past. The Theresa smiled as Mrs. Chen came in for her morning coffee. "Good morning, dear friend. How are you today?" "Perfect, now that I'm here," Mrs. Chen said, settling onto her usual stool. "Same as always." "Same as always," Theresa agreed, and it was true. The ice cream shop was the same, the routine was the same, the friendships and connections were the same. But Theresa was different, fuller, more at peace, more complete. She'd learned that you didn't have to choose between who you were and who you wanted to be. You could be both simultaneously, without contradiction. She was Theresa Collins, former federal agent, expert tracker, search and rescue trainer, mentor, community hero. And she was also Miss Theresa, the ice cream lady, neighbor, friend, regular person living a quiet life in a small town. Both were true, both were valid, both were her. And that, finally, was exactly enough. 20 years later, the dedication ceremony for the expanded Theresa Collins Search and Rescue Training Center drew people from across the country. At 87 years old, Theresa sat in a wheelchair on the stage, her hair completely white now, her face lined with age, but her eyes still sharp and aware. Emma Peterson Martinez, now 38 and a regional director for the National Park Service, gave the keynote speech. 20 years ago, a woman saved my life in a forest. She'd spent decades tracking dangerous criminals, then retired to run an ice cream shop. But when I needed her, she was there. She didn't let her fear stop her. She didn't let her past trauma prevent her from acting. She just did what needed to be done. That decision, that moment of choosing to help, has rippled forward through 2 decades. This training center has graduated over 5,000 search and rescue personnel. Those people have found and saved thousands of lost hikers, missing children, wandering elderly persons. Every single one of those lives traces back to Theresa Collins's decision to act when it mattered. But more than that, she taught us something important about ourselves. She showed us that you're never too old to make a difference, that past trauma doesn't have to define your future, that skills can be used for good, that an ordinary life can include extraordinary moments, and that the best kind of hero is the one who helps quietly, without fanfare, and then goes back to serving ice cream with a smile. The crowd laughed and applauded. After the ceremony, people came to pay their respects. There were rangers and deputies, trackers and trainers, EMTs and volunteer searchers. There were people whose lives she'd saved directly, and people who'd been saved by those she'd trained. Sarah Chen, now sheriff of the entire county, knelt beside Theresa's wheelchair. "How are you feeling, Theresa?" "Tired, but happy." "This is wonderful, Sarah. I never imagined any of this when I moved to North Canyon all those years ago. You built it, one lesson at a time, one person at a time. We built it together." Tommy Martinez, now director of the Western Region Search and Rescue Association, approached with his own children. "Miss Theresa, I want my kids to meet the person I've told them so many stories about." The children, shy but curious, said hello politely. Theresa smiled at them, remembering when their father had been a little boy pressing his nose against her shop window, begging for ice cream. "Your father was one of my best students," Theresa told them. "He's saved a lot of lives." "He says you saved even more," the older child said. "He says you're the best tracker in the world." "I was good at my job. But your father and everyone else here, they're the ones who took what I taught them and used it to help people. They're the real heroes." As the sun set on the ceremony, Mrs. Chen, impossibly still alive at 93 and just as sharp as ever, pushed Theresa's wheelchair to a quiet spot overlooking the valley. "Quite a journey," Mrs. Chen said. "From federal agent to fugitive, from traumatized woman to ice cream lady, from hiding to teaching, from North Canyon to national recognition. And yet, the best days were always the quiet ones in the shop," Theresa said. "Making ice cream, talking with neighbors, living simply." "That's because you understood something important. Purpose doesn't require drama. Meaning doesn't require fame. A good life is built on small moments, not grand gestures." "Though the grand gestures are nice too," Theresa said with a smile, gesturing at the new training facility bearing her name. "Especially when they're earned." Theresa looked out at the valley, at the forests where she'd once tracked fugitives and later found lost souls. At the town of North Canyon in the distance, where her little ice cream shop still stood, now run by Emma's younger sister, but still using Theresa's original recipes. At the training center where future generations would learn the skills she'd mastered. She thought about the paths not taken, the person she might have been if Marcus Hendricks hadn't taken that hostage, if she'd never left her federal job. She might have been more successful by conventional measures, higher rank, more arrests, more recognition in law enforcement circles. But she wouldn't have been happier. She wouldn't have found North Canyon, wouldn't have built the life she had, wouldn't have impacted so many people in such positive ways. "No regrets?" Mrs. Chen asked, as if reading her mind. "None," Theresa said firmly. "This was exactly the life I needed to live." As they sat together watching the sunset, Emma approached. "Miss Theresa, there's one more thing, the very last thing of the evening." "What's that, dear?" Emma brought forward a box. Inside was a small ice cream maker, brand new and shiny. "They're setting up a small cafeteria at the training center. We want to have an ice cream shop there, in your honor. We're calling it Miss Theresa's, and we want you to teach me how to make your famous cookies and cream recipe, so we can serve it to all the students." Theresa laughed, the sound coming from deep in her chest. After all these years, after all the recognition and honors and awards, what they wanted was her ice cream recipe. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. "Of course, Emma, I'd be happy to teach you. Though I have to warn you, the secret is in the cream to cookie ratio. Most people get it wrong." "Then it's a good thing I have the best teacher." As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Theresa felt a profound sense of completion. Her journey had been long and sometimes difficult, filled with triumphs and traumas, with running and returning, with fear and courage. But she'd ended up exactly where she belonged. Federal agent Theresa Collins had retired 27 years ago. But Miss Theresa, the ice cream lady of North Canyon, the teacher of trackers, the finder of lost souls, the quiet hero who'd saved so many lives, she would live on. Not just in the training center that bore her name, but in every person she'd taught, every life she'd saved, every moment of kindness she'd shown, and in the simple pleasure of cookies and cream ice cream, made with exactly the right ratio of cream to cookies, served with a smile to anyone who asked. That was her legacy, and it was more than enough. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We'd love to hear what inspired you the most. And where in the world are you watching from? Let us know below.